This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com. This show is brought to you by IndyWrestling.us. Check out IWC, RWA, and more. And listeners like you, support this show at patreon.com/Wrestling Mayhem Show.
Hungry as fuck, but I ain't starving yet. Paying for the pain, cocktail dollar set. Never said I was a gangster or thug, but I'm an animal. Beating for the taste of the fly.
Hey guys, it is the Indy Mayhem Show. I'm Mike Sorg at Sorgatron on the Twitter here in the Sorgatron Media Studios in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we got another great interview with you. This is the show where we talk with people in and around independent professional wrestling. And today we're talking with somebody that I got to meet recently thanks to Fight Underground, another cool connection that's come out of that project. Has been nice to make the connection, and we've seen a lot of new faces because of that, whether it's getting to know some of the veterans of the area or some people coming back to town, as tonight's case will be. But first, please go check out everything at IndyWrestling.us, where you can see a lot of people, including our guest tonight, in action over there, at least coming up here, I guess, as of this recording. And you can also support WrestlingMayhemShow.com. That's where this and other great podcasts are up over there. And please do that. And please check out, of course, tonight, our Fight Underground member with us. You can see the Fight Underground Area 2 currently streaming on all Fight Underground social media. This guy came in from New York City. He is Colossal Mike Law with us on the line tonight. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me, man. I know it's been a long time coming based on our, meeting recently, so I'm happy to be here.
It's good to have you on. Like I said, good to be introduced to you. First, I think I was kind of joking beforehand. I was like, I pretty much had a pre-prep for this interview from everybody talking about you on the fight councils and things like that over the
Right.
weeks leading up to this and leading up to what's going to be coming up with your match here.
Yeah, absolutely. I go back with a lot of people on the fight council, and it's one of those things where it just felt great. It felt like I was home again. You know what I mean? Just the feeling of going back to a place that a lot of opportunity started for me in Pittsburgh.
And I wanted to get to a little bit of that opportunity, but first we like to break the ice a little bit for those that maybe don't know yet. Like I said, I'm just being introduced to you over the last couple of months myself, and I think a lot of people just got introduced to you on the internet too. Maybe we'll touch on that a little bit later. But first of all, for those that don't know, what is your first memory of pro wrestling? Like growing up, like what's the first thing that kind of comes to mind?
I mean, the first thing I always tell people is like the first live event I ever went to was the main event was Ricky Steamboat versus Randy Savage inside of a steel cage, and that had to be in 1986. And, I'm dating myself here, right? But that watching that match, really just got me hooked. People are like, oh well, were you not a Hulkamaniac? Of course I was, and uh, but at that point I had watched wrestling for the first time live, and I was hooked ever since, and it just one of those things where it was always in my mind and in my life the center of attention. You know what I mean? Like, whether it was, whether it was watching in a live event or watching a pay-per-view, I was always hooked, and I always knew about my wrestling history. It wasn't just me watching the last 20 years. I watched Luthez. I watched stuff from, at that point, that was 20 years preceding that. I watched NWA, Crockett. I didn't know I only knew WWF because that was the biggest name in the Northeast for us, but then later on, I started watching the world class wrestling, and watching Brody and all that stuff. So it's been a lot of different stages of me as a fan, which eventually led to me, becoming, training to become a pro wrestler.
Was it always in your mind of like, I'd love to do this, like, when I grow up or when I could get to that point?
I tried out for the amateur wrestling team. I remember when I was in high school, the freshman high school, and the wrestling coach was a badass. I mean, he was a former Marine who got kicked out, I guess, for assault. And so he was a major badass. And I remember saying that I wanted to try out for the wrestling team. Now, mind you, I was 14 years old, man, and I was barely 100 pounds. I was probably like, 78, 80 pounds. I was just a small kid, and He laughed. He laughed at me. He goes, "You'd get killed out there." And I tried out for the amateur wrestling team later on, and didn't make it. And then at 15 years old, I met a promoter through my uncle who used to referee for him. And and then from there, I was like, he's like, "Oh, I'll give me this kid for a few years. We'll toughen him up, and we'll put some size on him. All that stuff. Back in '98 is when I first got involved in the pro wrestling industry.
That's awesome. So we know you, of course, here in the Pittsburgh area. Did you train in the Pittsburgh area, or you said that was your first opportunity?
No, I trained in Brooklyn, New York, in
Okay.
a place called Arena, Puerto Rico. A lot of guys who eventually became top guys in the not only in the Northeast but in independent wrestling. The SATs, Amazing Red, Homicide, Low Key. A lot of those guys had I would say a minute start because those guys got their training and became stars elsewhere. But a lot of those guys, came from there initially, and that's where I started my training. It was there. It wasn't very systematic.
Mhm.
I mean, you would get in there, and one day one guy was training, and the next day you were in there with somebody who probably didn't know what they were doing. Um, I eventually ended up going to a place called the Doghouse in Queens, New York, where I was trained by a guy named Lathon Tower Torture and a little bit by this guy named Eagle Morales. And those guys were, uh, I was stubborn and I was very narrow minded. Those guys really tried to lead me the proper way. Lathon definitely did. I just, I was very stuck in my own head a lot of times, which is, 95% of this whole thing.
And were you transitioning into like putting on the mask, like is that a part of that? Are you doing weight training alongside the training for wrestling?
Well, yeah, I mean, I started with a mask. Yeah, because in the state of New York, back in that point, wrestlers had to have had a license to wrestle. You couldn't wrestle freely unless you were approved by a doctor. The promoter had to vouch for you. You had to have a letter of recommendation. There was a lot that went into that process, plus the physical and all that, and blood work. And then you would have to pay the fee and whatnot. Um, I thought I was ready. I was not ready for years later. You know what I mean? I was
Mhm.
just not ready um, from a mental standpoint. You know what I mean? Not that I wasn't tough or mentally tough. I mean, I was put through the ringer plenty of times. I just like had no direction. You know what I mean? And that takes a long period of time. But frankly speaking, as far as back then, I wrestled with a mask because I looked, if I were to shave this beard off now, I'd, go back 10 years, it's just, good genetics. But with that being said, I wore a mask for the first few years because, like legally shouldn't have been in the ring anyway.
It's always interesting to hear. Like I forget which southern state still has licenses. Like I don't know if it's Carolina or something like that.
I want to say Louisiana still does.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Louisiana,
Hmm. Like
you know,
I think they're the ones that like barred pile drivers or something. WrestleMania weekend was the news when
right,
everybody went to
right.
shows down there. So they're still crazy. Or even here, we had Hank Hudson on a few episodes ago, depending on when you're listening to this, and talking about the license situation like before the '80s and things like that. So it's really wild to think about that with pro wrestling, especially looking at indies these days, right?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, listen, I think all things aside, I think if we were to take a look at bringing something like that back,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world in general. I think just having something in place for the betterment and the progress of the wrestling business. I know not speaking about certain things that happened recently, but to me, it's like it was a lot harder to get in back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in general, it was a lot more. It was the early 2000s were a crazy time in independent wrestling. You could never get away with some of the stuff that was being said and done at that point now, and some of it rightfully so.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like, it wasn't like you could just appear and put your tuition down and you were in. There was a lot, like you had to know people. It's kind of like the mafia, really.
Yeah, it sounds like still bits of what we hear about the old days of the territories. So tell me, so Under the Mask, was this the Sabotage character that we're talking about?
So I did that. It was funny because my mom, God rest her soul, she and I, we Sonny Bono had gotten killed in hitting a tree. He was skiing. He went
Yeah.
into a tree. Sonny Bono, if people don't know out there, is the late husband or ex-husband of Cher. He was a Senate or a congressman, and he had hit a tree. And it was one of those things where like that was like three in a row of famous people who had died like
Yeah.
week back to back, and we were just like, man, that sounds like Sabotage. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds like a cool like name. It's one word. It's easy to remember. People aren't gonna be able to like, okay, Sabotage. So that's what it was. I didn't want to use like my real name. I didn't want to use anything else at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I just needed to get something going with just to have that around.
And somehow this got you to Pittsburgh. Can you tell me how that got you all the way out here from what, a good 6, 7, 8 hours away? I guess it's like 8 hours away, isn't it?
I mean, at the time, it was like an eternity because we didn't have like we didn't have Waze or we didn't have
Yeah,
Google
yeah.
Maps. We had like MapQuest. I think was almost there at that point. Maybe
But you still had
MapQuest was a
to
thing.
print it out and hope that the ink didn't run out, right? So
Right.
done those.
Hey, listen, I can't tell you, Mike, the amount of times that I would just be like, you know what, I'll get there, and I just throw those things in the bag. I go, it's the adventure. It's all about the journey.
Yes.
And so it would take maybe you would consider now I could get there in like 5.5, 6 hours, but back in those days, man, it would take 10, maybe 11 hours, to get from New York to Pittsburgh. But it was always an adventure. So NWA
Mm-hmm.
slash NWA slash PWX, they had a tryout, and I think we had emailed the guys who were in charge of that, and so myself and two other New York guys, Jason Static, and one of my very good friends, one of my best friends, Spiral BKNY, another guy, God rest his soul, went down there, and me and Spiral had developed a bond. I didn't like him in the beginning. And I say this story a lot, but I never liked him in the beginning because I thought like this dude had like such an ego, But the thing is, he was so athletically gifted, and he was so confident that one wouldn't mistake that for egoism. And to be honest, man, he helped me so much. I mean, throughout this journey. But we went in there and we faced each other and we just tore it down. And then at that same night, at the Berg Brawl, I believe, we debuted against each other, and that was like I want to say 2004, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't have to go to like back to like cage like the website.
Cage Match, yeah.
Yeah, Cage Match. There you go. To double check that, but I believe it was like January or February of 2004.
Wow. Well, glad to have you back here. So tell me a little bit about this evolution from Sabotage to Colossal Mike Law that we see today.
I think that name had to like so I had spurts of time where I had left the wrestling business.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like when I tell people I say to people on my shirt and great since '98. That's when I started training. But I had taken spurts, like just for different reasons. But I knew coming back into wrestling, I started promoting again. I started, booking, shows and stuff like that. But I knew that the tide had changed. Sabotage. I was getting like emails to do death matches. You know what I mean? And hardcore matches because they thought there was another guy. There was another guy named Sabotage on the scene eventually that I guess was doing that sort of thing. So they thought we were the same person. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like you could go on Facebook or or Twitter and distinguish one from the other. So I was getting that stuff. I was like, no, that's not my thing, And then I just knew I had to like change something up, So for a while, I was coming up with these different monikers to try to, get something to stick. And I've always had a Napoleon complex, man. I've always carried myself with pride, chest out, shoulders up, like just it's just me like letting people know I'm here. You know what I mean? And that's just me, man. Like I don't care who likes it or doesn't. I respect myself. I know I put my work in, and it's a sense of pride. It's not me, again, egoism. It's just pride of, who I feel, I am. And I've always felt I was 6'7". I always felt I was, like, just even when I was a kid, when we played football, it would take 4 people to take me down. Cause I was just, I was like a little rabbit pit bull. I was just, I didn't want to, I never believed in my head that I was a smaller guy, despite the fact, obvious implications. But, I just try to put something that would really capture the character of who I was trying to let people believe who I thought I was, or who I am really. And that's Colossal. I was like, okay, like, and it flowed well with, my name, like Mike Law. So I was like, Colossal Mike Law. So that was pretty much it, man. I wanted people to be like, okay, there's no explaining. This is what this guy is. I mean, you can tell from just as soon as I come through the curtain, okay, this is what this whole deal is. There's no like crazy explanation of who this guy is.
My first introduction to you was I was sent this promo, and it was you in the middle of Times Square with the biggest dumbbell I've ever seen. And and just this great kind of, I think it was just a moving shot of you there with that, and I'm just like, okay, who the hell is this guy? where do we find this guy from? Because I don't know where they're pulling from the Rolodex for the Fight Underground stuff. And you got to tell me how the dumbbell came into play, because that's the visuals tremendous.
Yeah, and I have to give all the credit to my brother. He's actually an official. He referees for a lot of places. He we just as far as being able to stick out, you want to be able to capture people's attention as soon as you come out that curtain. So for me, like, okay, my gear, I pride myself on wearing the best wrestling gear. I invest in myself. I make sure that when I come out there, that people's attention is on me. So when I just needed something else, you know what I mean? Because with all things aside, that like the average size of independent wrestlers, it's not when I started where most of those guys were like over 6 feet tall, over 220 pounds. They were giants. Where now it's like, okay, the athleticism has, the whole paradigm has changed, which is what it is. It's fine. So I needed something to help me stick out from everyone else. And, what a better way than present Colossal Mike Law with his own huge barbell, And I was like, okay, let's just make this as freakishly big and as crazy looking as possible, because as soon as that music hits and I come out, even if you're one of those people who's on their phone, you're going to have to look up and say, what the hell is this? What's going on here? And you kind of just hook them with the gimmick and you sell them with the work rate, has always been my mentality.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I have to ask, because you kind of caught fire with a GIF that's been going around the internet. I was just taking a peek at your Facebook, and I saw, like, I don't know how many shares of this GIF. I have people sending it to me, yes, I guess yesterday it blew up. At least that's when I came across it. So you had an encounter with a chair, I understand. Can you tell me a little bit about, is there any what happened?
Me and that chair have heat, it owed me money, so I took my aggression out. Listen, I don't make any apologies for anything. I've been, this is not the first time I've done something like that.
Yeah.
It just didn't catch fire like this, and whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, listen, I've been doing this long enough. I would never put myself or my opponent in a compromised situation where I couldn't get up or they couldn't get up to do this the next day. In my heart and soul, I truly believe it. People are taking a view of different. People like, oh man, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen, or that's awesome, that's sick. And you have people who aren't big fans of it. And listen, at the end of the day, it's all good. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not one to sit there and like it's just I don't have the time. I have two businesses that I work with. I don't have the time to decipher every little thing. And so I'm sure plenty of people have thrown their 2 cents in there. It's all good. I personally know that the people who know who I am know how I as a professional wrestler, been doing this for a while, would never put myself or anyone in a situation where they wouldn't be able to get back up and do this the next day if they had to. I've always stuck to myself as being a professional. Anyone who's dealt with me in the last 16 years, as far as an in-ring wrestler, knows that that's just the way I've been. And I make no apologies or anything regarding that. I put my heart and soul to everything. There was about 3-4 month build to this thing. Joy and I had done all the proper things in terms of building this thing, and at the end of the day, like, it's gonna, every time we get in that ring, there's a risk involved. I make sure that I minimize these risks myself by doing stuff that I know I can, get away with, and listen, it's all risky, and people are gonna decipher it any way they want, and that's perfectly fine by me. I just, like I said, ultimately, I do this because I wanted people to know that, this was a championship match. It was for 2 championships. We had put a lot of heart and soul into making this event be seen by a lot of people. It's going to be on IWTV soon as well. So I think it's one of those things where, I want to put my best foot forward and have no regrets about putting it all out there.
It is impressive. The GIF in question, like you suicide dive and go directly through a chair, like the middle of a chair. Like, I think you're wearing the chair after you land. And of course, the first question
it was like a little tutu afterwards.
Yeah. And of course, I get sent this thing, and I'm like, my God, is he okay? So,
right,
and of course,
right. I mean, listen. I don't blame people for freaking out. It certainly looked a certain way, Mike, and so I totally get it.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I pride myself in doing this thing, man. I don't know. I can't be as adamant as I want to about the fact that, if I had gotten injured, that would all have been on me. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day,
absolutely.
I'm not one of those guys that I hold myself accountable and responsible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like it's kind of a kids don't try this at home situation too. So
I wasn't something I was doing when I was a kid. So I wouldn't recommend an adult who hasn't been trained, let alone any child, to do something like this.
Absolutely. So hey, I'd rather you went through it than bounced off of it personally. So I think it's the best scenario.
I will say, and anyone could debate this, the pinpoint accuracy that I had on that right through. Crazy shit happens, man.
There you go. He's like a Robin Hood arrow right there, Michael Law. The arrow of Mike Law. Maybe we can get that. You can get a giant arrow to go with that.
Maybe that'll be the next phase of my career.
There you go. Do one of them Damian Priest kind of entrances. That'll be great. So I had to touch on that, and again, I love that that's popping up. I love to see you're blowing up on that, and I hope that brings a lot of attention to this. ECWA is a promotion, and you say they'll be on IWTV with this event. What's the name of the event so people can watch out for it?
I want to say it was holiday, something holiday. Like, everyone does the holiday thing. That's not gonna pop off the top of my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was but yeah, it's ECWA. It's gonna be on IWTV. A lot of other fantastic talent and matches also there. If my whole thing wasn't what you enjoy in wrestling, that's perfectly fine. Just know that there was more than 15 seconds of action, and that that match was, in my opinion and in my head, was as grueling, and it was as intense as I had promised that it would be a few weeks back. I'm a man of my word. What can I say?
And either way, ECWA is a promotion that I know I hear about a good bit. A lot of great stuff happening there. Just look up any of that on IWTV or wherever you may find that stuff. So I got to talk to you about a little bit of Fight Underground. Like, we kind of started with it, and that's why I got to know you and everything, and we worked on that project here. The first match has been announced. You're coming into this tournament here. The match will be shown as of this recording, as of this broadcast, next week over on the Fight Underground social media. Again, it's a different kind of setup, than the shows that we're seeing your gifts from. So tell me a little bit. What was it like to, being a part of a something like a Fight Underground and this kind of mash of a new different talent that seems to be coming together here in Pittsburgh?
I knew once, I was asked to be a part of it and be in this tournament that it was going to be unique. You know what I mean? I had seen some previous footage actually, and I was like, okay, this is cool, man. Like, I love the idea that this is a true like underground feel, man. Like, it's it's edgy. You know what I mean? Like, there's a gusto to it. To me, I think that's one of the things that's missing in wrestling. And I know a lot of companies have tried to really duplicate that kind of aura from the early 90s, late 90s, but I just kind of felt it. You know what I mean? I felt that atmosphere, and I certainly felt the hunger. Man, like, I love the hunger from the Pittsburgh crew, man. Like, that whole area has always been, a more rugged, hard hitting, just stylistically, it's always been there. That forte. And so and getting there, I was like, I can feel that vibe, man, and it was something that I think the fans are just going to be in for a big treat.
Of course, the first match this past week, Sam Beal, John Roden. There's a lot of interesting names in this tournament. Is there anything that you're looking forward to maybe running into along this to see some of the talent face to face?
And seeing these guys go at it, man, it's exciting to me. And I mean, I can't put into words, as far as myself, that there's still some excitement in me left when I see some of the younger talent going out there and just going out there um and just being more aggressive, being, laying it in. It's like me watching, like watching it. I'm covering up and I'm throwing a jab and I'm getting involved, like, from not only a mental aspect and an emotional aspect, but a physical aspect. And like, I love watching that, man. I love watching, like, these, younger, hungry guys, not going on there and trying to, get themselves over on like clout. They're doing it because they love this thing, and they're doing it on hard work, and it's easy sometimes to take that easy pass that a lot of people have taken, and I get that. It's not the way I've done it. But I think ultimately, like, my respect goes up tenfold when I see some of these younger guys go in and just tear the roof apart, man. It's so motivating.
And I think you were a little later in the tapings that day too. So you got to see a lot of it and get that vibe, kind of absorb that a little bit before it was your turn.
It was hard, man. I'll tell you, it's hard watching from the side. I don't know if I'll ever be able to be part of the wrestling business after I, decide to call it quits, because just watching, I was pacing back and forth, man, and I'm like, I just, let me in, man. Like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to, like, do this thing, and that's just my mentality, like, whether, in training, whether it was amateur wrestling or kickboxing or anything like that, I always, like, I just want to get in there. I just want to. It's probably to a detriment because to go in there sometimes you might feel like you're prepared, but mentally you're probably like 10 steps ahead, and that's not always a smart idea. But that's me, man. I just, like, full speed ahead.
And also, the star of your show that I think is hanging during most of the matches is your jacket. It's in the background. You can look out for that Easter egg in the previous matches that have been out. So I was starting to go through. I'm like, what is this? What is that bright thing in the background on the wall? And I was like, oh, that's Mike Law's jacket. Got it.
Yeah. Only the best, man. I try to stand out any way I can, man, and just that's in the ring, out of the ring, the way I present myself. The jackets are a part of the whole deal.
Absolutely. It's also interesting, the Easter eggs of who is sitting out there, what's going on. Maybe you see a couple things you're not supposed to see. Who knows? Who knows out there when you put a bunch of wrestlers in one room during matches?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think, to me, I like that because it's literally studying these guys as you're going along. You know what I mean? A lot of times, if I had a match coming up, I would be this person's match to see what what am I getting myself into? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, if it's out there. But this is great because you're seeing what potential matches you have lined up, and you're like, okay, well, this is what I can, okay, so I can avoid this, and it's very good strategically to be able to be there and kind of set your mind ahead and be like, okay, these are my potential matches. This is this guy's weakness. This is this guy's like, best abilities, and I'm just gonna try to outshine them and win. Like that's my mentality when I'm watching this stuff.
Absolutely. Last question for the night. What's the best and worst thing about wrestling for you?
The best thing about wrestling is the unity that it can provide, uh, regardless of race, sexual orientation, religious beliefs, musical taste, food, whatever. I love that pro wrestling unites everybody, man. And I think that's such an important part, much like music does, like I think wrestling is one of those genres of not only sport but entertainment that people can really get together and let go of all the other bullshit and just be like, okay, this is we love that this can unite us, and I think if we really focus on that, man, wrestling could conquer the world again. And my least favorite thing about it is the opposite, the divide. You know what I mean? Like, I'm disappointed in some of the people that I've seen as far and or have heard, regarding certain comments. And, you know, to me, man, I never had to go online to get myself clout or anything like that. I just put the work in, man. And for people who watch, whether you watch me wrestle from the time I started till maybe you just watch that clip and whether it got you interested in me as a person or as a wrestler, just know that it's all been through hard work, man, and it won't stop. I mean, I don't expect just because this thing is hitting its uh increase in viewership that I'm gonna I'm gonna lay back. No, man, the promos will still be out there, the vignettes will still be out there. I'll be in the gym tomorrow working out. I'll be training in the ring later this week. You know what I mean? Taking the necessary precautions. But just know that like I don't rest on my laurels, man. I never have, never will. I wasn't built that way. I work hard for what I have been not necessarily given, but what I've had to take. And I have a lot of pride in that.
Absolutely. So where can people find you online, and generally where can they find you promotion wise?
Well, you can. I'm going to plug the stores because merch, it's a holiday
For
season.
sure.
Why not, right? Go to my storefrontier.com site. Just type in Colossal. It's COLLOSSAL. I had that problem the other night in Massachusetts with spelling my own name. So, Colossal Mike Law, and that's my Store Frontier site. And you can just type that in, and we have sweaters, shirts, tank tops, kids wear, you name it. And then it's my pro wrestling tee site, same thing. Just type in Colossal Mike Law. You can catch me on Instagram, Facebook. Well, not Facebook. I don't have any more room for anybody. Just follow my page, Colossal Mike Law. It's that across the board. I cannot make it any easier for you people than just say it's Colossal Mike Law.
And don't worry, Google will take care of that spelling if you're having trouble like I did when I first had them coming in. I'm like, okay.
Listen,
right.
I still have trouble. I can see why I can see why promoters only put Mike Law. I go, guys, it is Colossal Mike Law. It's been like that for years. But now I could understand when I was asked the other day what it was. I was like, wait, is that the spelling? Because when you spell it out, it looks weird.
Yeah,
it doesn't look like it should be spelled.
I've dropped a moniker or two for spelling on a title here and there for sure. Yeah. I'm like, I'd rather it not go out wrong than we'll just.
Right.
Well, again, looking forward one to watch on Fight Underground or IWTV or wherever you come across Mike Law. Just follow his Twitter and find out where he's going to be here in the future, because who knows where any of us are going to be in 3 months from now, right? So we're trying to do events. Definitely trying, but we'll see what life gets us here. So with that, hey, thanks, Mike Law, for joining us. and follow him. Check him out over there, and you can check out him and a lot of other great stuff over at IndyWrestling.us. Until next time, please support Indie Wrestling.
You know how I act now. If you got a problem, come and see if I'm a back down. Act wild. Steady sipping check now.
This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.